Here to talk today about something new. Not about shiny objects. We're going to do a little bit of a reflection on the way things have been and look. And I think Ralph Rio, with your last session, and ExxonMobil, you sort of teed us up, right? You gave us a view. You started talking about gaming and visualization technologies. But you're in for a treat this time because we really are going to limit the presentation, and this is going to be a panel, and we've got some fantastic panelists coming forward. So as part of that, we really want to make sure that we've got your questions. As soon as I learn how to use the clicker, and I'm going to skip past that because you guys have been to enough sessions already. So let's talk about digital twins and what we're doing. So first of all, so ARC, so we're a bunch of analysts and consultants. We like to work with our customers. So we've actually been working with some oil and chemical companies for the past, past about the 2 years. I think it got started during the last ARC forum. We got together and we formed something called the Sustainable Asset Digital Twin Working Group, which is focusing very much on open digital twins. And I was sort of reminded by something that actually got started by Don Bartusiak from ExxonMobil back in 2016 when he started introducing concepts and visionary statements around open process automation. So you're going to hear from some experts today, and they're going to be talking a little bit about openness and interoperability with digital twins. So digital twins are open to accommodate the variety of applications and business processes for the operate and maintain, right? So you heard lots of discussions and presentations during the last session about design and build. We're going to focus a little bit more on the operate and maintain this side for this presentation. But if you look at the slide that I'm presenting, if you think about digital twins from a lost opportunity point of view, and Vikas from Shell, he talked a little bit about productivity, and I think that's really important when you think about it from the way data gets created. You know, we start off with conceptual design and basic engineering. We've got point solution, we've got different tools, right? Then we go into detailed design, we introduce more stakeholders into the project. Guess what? We've got more tools. And then we get into build and operate, and then we're getting serious because we're starting to put steel together and 3D, 3D tools to help us build the facilities and create construction work packages and everything that goes along with the build phase. And then guess what? We've got a poor handover, and then we expect operations, and yeah, there's probably some operations and maintenance people on the project that were assigned to have O&M activities to make sure that operations get the right docs. But for the operate and maintain phase, they sort of have to start all over again with, guess what? More tools, okay? More point solutions. So if you think about what that is if you could actually eliminate all these different handovers and all these gaps in work processes across that entire asset lifecycle, right? That little chart of productivity or profit and knowledge, it would actually be off the chart, right? And I'm showing this linear, but of course we know this is not linear. This is actually a circular process. It never ends, right? Whether it's brownfield or greenfield or putting new reactors or new furnaces or new piping or new upstream hardware, this is just never ending, right? So we have a working group, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the working group in a second. But some of the things that we've heard about digital twins, and the reason we want to think about openness are because of things like data silos, right? Anybody have data silos? Yeah, probably a few of them, right? Yeah. Point solutions. Does anybody talk about scalability, and is scalability easy? Probably not. Right? Disconnected data flows and work processes, poor interoperability between systems, and guess what? There's just not enough standards to address this. Okay? So this is I just really want to start things off. I'm going to hand this over to some experts. And I mentioned this concept of a working group. So Ralph Rio, my colleague, Ralph does market studies for engineering design tools and APM and a bunch of other things. I've been learning from him for about a decade. He's got lots more experience than me. So Ralph and I have been working with some great companies, ExxonMobil, Shell, Dow, Chevron, okay? So we formed a working group because we felt as though we needed to really spend some time and dig in. Recently, we actually published a paper because we like to write reports. in this report here, moving towards sustainable asset digital twins, we could normally pull this off in 2 days. But I think this one took us, I don't know, 10 days, right? Because it took a long time, right? Because we were bringing experts together. We had some in-person meetings, and we would like to have some more in-person meetings. And in the future, we're probably going to have more in-person meetings and maybe a little less Zoom, right? So I just wanted to list everybody here because in this working group, we call them the document contributors. I'm not going to list off all the names here, but many of those folks are in the room. I think Jim Schneider from Chevron might not be here. I haven't seen him yet, but everybody else is here. And the good thing about this session, we kind of saved this one for the last because who knows, they might have to hold the bus because we might still want to be talking about sustainable open asset digital twins at 6:30 tonight. We'll leave that up to you, okay? So we created a document. These are the folks. We had a whole lot of fun doing it. We learned a lot, and I think they learned a lot because what was interesting about all this is the discussions about interoperability or sustainability in technology. It was really interesting to see the different companies coming together with the same problems, right? Of course, nobody talked about profits and all those things that we're not supposed to talk about with companies, but they talked about honest challenges. They brought out new use cases for solutions that are not commercialized yet, right? Especially in the operations and maintenance phase, right? So first of all, this document may be in your swag kit. If you've played with the app a little bit, there's a section for documents. You can download this. And I suggest that if you're interested in the future of digital twins being open, I suggest that you take a chance to read that document and contact anybody that's on this list or contact ARC because we'd love to hear from you in addition.
All right, good afternoon. Can you guys, everybody hear me? Yep. I feel like I've been set up a little bit for this presentation. How many people were here at the 2 o'clock? Just about everybody, right? And I think it's important because I'll try not to repeat some of the comments that were made at the 2 o'clock. Because at the 2 o'clock discussion, what you heard was a lot about vision. You heard a lot about North Star, right? Where do we want to go? Part of what we're having a discussion around today and now is what's stopping us from getting there, right? Let me first introduce myself. I am the Global Operations Excellence Digital Manager. I am responsible for the digital footprint of the entire downstream facilities at ExxonMobil. I also work with my esteemed colleagues in IT and research and engineering, and heavily involved in our IT/OT, what I would say OPA and cybersecurity. So it's the full kit, and as we've had discussions at 2 o'clock, after a lot of great ideas, things get developed, they get handed to my organization to operate and maintain, right? And I think this is an area, just to be frank, this is an area where from an operations and maintenance standpoint, we were a little sleepy in terms of catching up, right? A little bit about my background. I have 31 years with ExxonMobil. I guess I would call myself a manufacturer. I have been everywhere from a technical manager, engineering manager, operations manager, maintenance manager at a number of our ExxonMobil facilities, chemicals, refining, lubes, et cetera. I didn't say I was IT, right? So again, I'm back to, at the end of the day, this is all about how do we sustain value. And all of us here have been part of a journey where, quite frankly, we have seen examples as part of our digital transformation, solutions looking for a problem. We've seen sexy, shiny keys get handed over to where it's like, how are we actually going to sustain this and find ourselves 2 to 3 years down the road where, our technical debt has been lost. So this working group that we got together, a couple of things I'd share is the last time we were having a discussion about digital twins, there was a lot of input about the great work that was going on with what I would say greenfields capital projects. And after we went through our face-to-face in the February of 2020, I went back to the ARC group and said, the odd thing was I didn't see a single owner up on stage talking about the trials, tribulations, the positives and failures of how did they actually keep that digital asset moving forward. And we had a workshop. A virtual workshop, which was heavily attended, to my surprise, where we had probably 50 to 60 different companies participate, all just kind of talking about, what were some of the common industry pinch points that are limiting our adoption of 3D in the way we do our work. And I think as part of that, when you start talking about pinch points, you also need to be talking a little bit generic around, well, what are the use cases that you're going to sustain? And so in this backup of this deck, there's actually a table of the number of use cases. I'll tell you, inside of ExxonMobil, a lot of the work that was shared before, we have somewhere between 80 and 90 different use cases that are identified for the value of a digital twin. But throughout the conference, everybody will talk to you about the benefits, and they'll talk to you about the value. I didn't hear a single word about cost, right? I didn't hear a single thing about the effort or organization it's going to take to sustain this, which is the point of our conversation that we're going to have today. So our group has met a couple of times, as Peter mentioned. We identified some common pain points of, like, really amongst the oil and gas industry, what are the pain points with us using this technology? And we have to first be humble around, oil and gas is not the leader in this space. There are other adjacent industries that are much further along than we are when it talks about using the concepts of a digital twin or a digital asset in the way they work. If you haven't looked, at automotive or airline or even in some of the widget markets, they are much further along than where we are in what I would say in the petrochemical and oil and gas. And so we need to learn from that. We need to learn in terms of how do we move forward. So in 22, as mentioned, we kind of pulled a charter together because the reason why I wanted to have this discussion with all of us today, and if you were here at the 2 o'clock to talk about our vision and the North Star, where we're going, we cannot do that by ourselves. It's going to take everybody in this room. This is an industry opportunity in our view, right? I think there's a lot of opportunities of, great in terms of the way we do work, but if we're going to truly change and transform the way petrochemicals and oil and gas truly operates, it's going to take industry to get there. The question that was asked, in the last session of, when are you going to stop 2D drawings, right? And what I've shared, I did this during the kickoff in 2022, or in 2020. There's too many twos in there. It's going to take us, in some cases, the reason why we maintain some of that 2D is regulatory. And until the industry gets behind a different way to work and we go to some of our regulatory authorities and basically highlight that instead of asking me to maintain these 2D drawings, we have the same or even better information in a 3D image of those activities. That's what it's going to take in order to change some of the regulations. That is not going to be a single company. It's going to take the industry to help us move in that direction. So I've been very flattered. This is a diagram that we have shared, and I know most the sessions I've gone through this week, it's been repeated to a certain degree, right? Because I do want to reorient. It is very interesting, and I agree with the comments that were made before. I really tried to avoid the word digital twin. But if I look at this, this is the same concept. Won't really read through it in terms of activities, but there are some elements here I do want to share, right? On the right-hand side, on the top left, right? This is where a lot of examples where you're talking about engineering, thermodynamic, process control. There's a lot of work that's going on in this space. That's not the focus that I want to talk about. And the bottom side, any type of 3D asset, whether it's a reality capture with the internal and ExxonMobil, I will tell people it's nothing but a dumb picture. It's only a dumb picture until you interlace it with data. Then it starts to get more and more intelligent. And quite frankly, when you talk about data aggregation, data cleansing, data curation, where's my uptake folks and element folks? Like, there's a lot of work that's going on in that space. Everybody's either buying it, everybody's selling it, not an area I want to focus on. The focus, for the discussion is really the highlighted what's in blue, which is the visualization, and I apologize, the color here doesn't really come across, but it's the 3D visualization of the asset. This is an area where I would say that in terms of the vision of where we want to go, there's more work that needs to go in this space to allow what I would say open architect. Let me go back to OPA. One of the key principles of OPA, separate hardware from software. In terms of the space that I see this moving in, we are now going to be talking about separating software from data, right? If I'm truly going to get to an open ecosystem that's going to enable everyone in this room who has a completely different kit of assets in terms of how they manage, it needs to be in an open architect. And if we can't get there, this will die a slow death. All right, so very quickly here, when we talk about the maturity of a 3D image, right? Because I've heard a lot of people say, we have 3D models, et cetera. Just from my perspective, the maturity can be defined by the complexity, the level of integration. How many different data sets have you actually integrated with, right? Or the number of what I would say sustainable business use cases that you're using. I have to, be honest, within ExxonMobil, when I talk about sustainable use cases of a 3D model, most of those are singular. One, right? We've done it once. Quick story. I had one of my inspection companies come up to me and say, Michael, let me tell you how smart you are when it comes to your digital assets. We went out to go scan one of your units, but we had to wait until the previous scanning company finished their scan so we could go scan it as well, right? And I say that, I wish it was in jest, but it was actually true, where we had gotten to the point where we're taking the assets or the technology or technical depth, got it to a single use only. And I would say that's a place where I don't think it's going to be sustainable in the long run. And when we talk about the intelligence of a model, right? Now I get into, is the model used for feed forward? Or quite frankly, I've shared this with a number of my folks, when we talk about 3D models, do I need my son to just build us a Minecraft version of our plant? Because all it is a portal of information, right? Some of that you got to think to yourself, well, what are you actually going to use the model for? Because if it's just a portal of information, my son's for hire, he'll build you a Minecraft thing, in a night, him and his buddies, right? But if you really want to get to where it's batch offline information, hindsight, or really the interesting part is if I want to get real time. How many people here use Google Maps or Apple Maps? How many Wazers do I have in the house? All right, a handful, right? I mean, so, one of the things, if you think about that, between, what I would say Apple and Waze, is that you get information by interacting with it, right? If you are a Wazer, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, I apologize, but you will actually get dynamic information by use of the tool. I mean, again, this is go back to the journey on digital procedures, right? Digital procedures are not electronic procedures. Digital procedures should be providing you information, by interacting with the procedure that you can get in terms of dynamic information as opposed to just following a checklist, right? The same is with, if I think about a 3D model. Do I have a 3D model because it's stagnant, because somebody's going to go buy or design something? Or do I have a 3D model because it tells me information? Like, will it say, Michael, you have a pipe that's on your unit that is not on an approved MOC. Like, I want my model to tell me that. I mean, I don't know about all of you, but chasing down red line to black lines on P&IDs is a constant battle in terms of making sure that we stay connected. My intention is that we will find a way to use a 3D visualization of an asset to improve upon that process. And I guess, lastly here, is we start talking about the fidelity and frequency of a model. How many people remember, I'm really going to date myself here, but how many people remember when you were taking pictures of the plants and you had to line up all the vehicles in the parking lot because the satellite was going to come over, you were going to take a picture for plot plans? Nobody? I'm the only one? Okay, I got a couple of people, right? I mean, and so you did that once a year, right? Using satellite imagery was the best that we had. But as you talk about the use cases that you're trying to unlock, the fidelity of the model or the frequency of the updates matters, right? When I talk about the fidelity, right, is this one of those to where it's like horseshoes, I just need to be close? Or, quite frankly, if you have the vision to where I want to know the torquing spec on a bolt that's at 90 degrees on an exchanger, and I want that to show up on my 3D model. Or I'm going to use, for energy isolation, I'm going to have flanges to where it's clear that I can use AR in a self device to make sure that I have appropriately done OPE, opening process equipment, in energy isolation. What I just talked about is not a technology issue. That technology already exists. The challenge that we have is being able to scale it. So my team gets a kick out of this slide because this is the kind of the state where we are. If I look at my 3D and data, it is all over the map, right? We have, unfortunately, we have painfully learned of what not to do. And part of when I said I was sleeping before, my organization is part of owning and operating this going forth. We have just stood up to where like, okay, capital projects, thank you very much. We will own it, and we are going to sustain it moving forward. And this is what I'm trying to work or improve upon. This is the future state, and some of this was mentioned before. If you look at the capture, store, deliver, consume, high level, the first box is what the very important part I want to make sure is clear. We intend to be agnostic in terms of how the imagery gets developed. And whether that's photogrammetry, whether that's LiDAR, laser scan, or is it an engineering model? I intend to be agnostic. I don't care, right? I want it to be interoperable. Just like the early days of Google Earth, right? If I had engineering model and reality capture, at some point they come together, I don't know the difference, right? To me, that's part of the vision if you're talking about reuse in terms of modality and getting it to where I can consume that 3D image. And again, the things that I'm talking about in terms of using 3D image, I'm not talking about building pipe. Building pipe, that's a use case. Of the 80 use cases in terms of adding value to the business, a number of them, you're going to need to have people. You're going to have equipment. You're going to have to get down to understanding the statuses of work that is ongoing in maintenance. Today, in our plants, we have people that are superhuman with a radio, right? If you've ever been part of an operating or routine maintenance, everything we do is with a radio. Hey, is the scaffold built? Is it ready to go? All of that. Tell me why not in the future, in a visual way of working, why can't that all be rendered in a 3D model to give you accurate and up-to-date information? You're not going to use a satellite to go get that scan. You may get to the point, and all of you that have, is it 12 or higher? You have LiDAR cameras on your phone today. You can take 3D imagery today. What's stopping you from integrating that with your 3D model at your facility? This is part of the vision that we see in terms of how do we move forward? Because in everything that I just mentioned, the fundamental that I'm interested in doing is taking cost out of the business, right? This is not technology for technology's sake. So, as I've mentioned before, that little cloud that's in the center here, when you start enabling reuse of images in a centralized storage, you're integrating it with data. And I don't know about your sites, but for us, at a corporate scale, integrating data into assets is a very, very costly activity. And this is not a place where I can afford to have 25 different variations of 3D models, et cetera, in order to increase value. We are trying to do that at scale. All right, so the last slide here, really, when we got together, this is, you asked me, I shared with you about the future. Let me tell you why we can't currently get there, right? Today, what I would say is that 3D images in terms of operations and sustainability is a cost-plus proposition. You can do all that stuff, you're just gonna have to pay more for it. You thought you were paying people to maintain P&IDs, inspection ISOs, right? Now you just need to pay somebody else to maintain your 3D model, right? I will tell you that that's gonna have a short life. And unless we can figure out a way in terms of using either low-cost scanning capability to integrate with that, right? Until I can start to lay down work processes that would say, I'm no longer gonna do that, as the question was mentioned earlier. I intend that at some point I'm gonna stop maintaining inspection ISOs. I just pick something, right? I mean, P&IDs, I'd love to be able to figure out how to do that in an open architecture. I led with that one because today, if I'm building greenfields, a lot of our suppliers have done an excellent job of doing a vertically integrated stack. But I will tell you, thank you very much, that doesn't help me at all. Because what happens is, as the person that's responsible for maintaining it, it's one of those throw it over the fence. My capital projects guys, sorry, but they're off to building something else. And I'm stuck now trying to operate and maintain yet another stack of tightly integrated activities. The only way I see that working going forward is finding ways to where, quite frankly, I'm not going to change corporate-wide every place where I have my P&IDs. I am going to be expecting to plug that into an open operable system. In order to do that, I need to have on-ramps and off-ramps of some of these systems. And of course, doing that gets back to where you're managing 3D and data. And today, a lot of the work that I've said, I'm sorry, my view is that people that are delivered 3D models, it's all custom built. And with the word custom comes the word cost, right? And it's not truly something that I would say is sustainable. And I think the last part here is really around in the space that we're talking about. I mean, I don't know if it's the lack of standards, or I was talking during the break, it's like, no, it's not a lack of standards. We love them so much, we have so many of them, right? So we have so many standards, the issue is nobody follows any of them, right? I mean, and I'll be honest with you, my technical team will have to help me of whereabouts that is. All I can say today is that from all of the projects where I currently have 3D engineered models, or I'm doing reality capture, they are not, from a standards base, the data is not in the same format. And that's an area that we are trying to work, develop guardrails so that as we get smarter moving forward of what not to do. But I would say that ExxonMobil alone can't get that because, as I said, from a vision of having a visual way of working, it's going to take the industry to get there. It's going to take other fellow owners, operators, and quite frankly, yes, all of our suppliers to be key partners in this journey. But part of what I need to do is make sure it's clear in terms of our case for action around if we are going to operate and maintain, I've got to have an open operable system. I've got to be able to separate data from software, right? Because otherwise, I think it's one of those, most of us will get in a position where we are not going to be at this point be able to pick winners and losers and then find ourselves in 5 years where we get to start all over again. That is not going to be a proposition that I think is going to have a lot of value. So I'll leave it here. That was my last slide. And I think Manoj is coming up, going to talk a little bit about data.
I'm Manoj Dharwadkar from Dow. My current role is Senior IT/OT Architecture Manager. Recently, I changed my role. It was in the equipment digital thread, responsible for digital workflow. Now, I'm in the Operations IT/OT Tech Center, and my role is to define strategy for data and workflow integration. And it's my responsibility to work with the team to define data governance policies and interoperability standards to take us to this vision. But today here I'm part of the working group. It's Dow's privilege to be part of this working group. And I'm going to add just a few more points to this excellent introduction by Michael. So what we've been talking about digital twin, and there were good definitions provided, but what I'm going to get into is, digital twin is a replica of the actual physical object. But what is even more important is the digital thread that kind of connects the data flows between these different various silos that holds information about the asset. And that is what we want a good way to look at that, to be able to collectively get information of the asset by connecting the silos. And why is that important? Because majority of the time, the engineers spend is trying to figure out whether the data is correct, whether you can rely on that. But they should be actually focusing on making decisions based on understanding that the data is taken care of. This is the most accurate and correct data. And because that decision is going to kind of affect the outcome, and the more time they spend on that, the better off will be. So data is a key pillar for Dow's ambition of going digital, and we are on that journey. But what we need is to make this affordable, bring the cost down, and do it in a collaborative way, because not a single company cannot solve all the problems. So why is data the key? Traditionally, we all know, people leverage technology. Okay, they follow work processes, and data is like intertwined in everything. And data is getting a raw deal. It gets moved from functions to functions, and is not able to be relied upon independently. So now is the time where data is a business asset, right? Like if you look at the health industry, your data is even more important than your actual health at some point before, so that you can get good treatment. And there will be time when data in our industry also becomes as important as the actual asset. Now, currently, we all have data debt. We are not able to fully rely on that. The data quality is going down. So what this will help is to improve the overall quality of the data. And that is the reason we need to focus on that. So how do we do that? The idea is you first simplify, because Michael showed, if you look at in all the companies, the data flows, it's all over the place. We need to simplify and look at what are the key silos, what is the information flow between them, and then standardize. Okay, only then, once you standardize the key silos, then you can automate. So I'm going to quickly show the three big pillars of the sustainable digital thread. One of the most important one is the common conceptual data model. What is the data model that stitches the whole asset lifecycle data? We need to make sure we maintain that, because that is the blueprint of the whole asset, right, and the lifecycle. And maintaining that, every company cannot do that, because then you're duplicating the effort, because this is a common information model about the whole asset. And this is where we need to use the data standards, work with what's there, collaborate, and start maintaining only the unique aspects within the different companies. Here I'm talking about sharing semantics, right? What is the dictionary and taxonomy information, focus on the life cycle, what events are critical, when the life cycle stages changes, from design to procure to construction, and so that you can use an event-driven architecture to look at your data. Also, it's important to have the hierarchy and getting the breakdown, like you may have the system wise breakdown or the area wise breakdown, and all of those details can be defined. The second big pillar is the asset register, something that will allow you, to federate across the different sources, silos that you have. Because as we said, we are not going to have a monolithic system to build all the data and put it in one place, because maintaining that is going to be a nightmare. So the key is data federation. Keep the data federated using good principles, use the system of record, manage it through this register. And as some of you said and discussed in the 2 o'clock presentation, the change management is the most important part of maintaining the data, right? And to do that, you need to maintain the register and then keep track of all the changes that happen. And also, another key aspect of what we are talking about is, why do we have such a big data debt? Because there's different formats used. Even for something simple like the tag, there are different formats used all over the places, and synchronizing that becomes a very difficult task. So that mapping has to be kept consistent. So all of this gets into your register. And then the third piece is the plug and play. This is where you use the technology to use the service-based approach to have plug and play using the definitions, using the data model and the asset register. You focus, as Michael said, focus on the data and not individual software's API. Just use the standard API to plug and play between different sources, and use your query response or publish subscribe method, and maintain a service registry. So these are some of the aspects that are there. There are standards there. We need to work together, collaborate, and start resolving the gaps. So I'll leave with this last slide here. It's like, how can we make this more sustainable, is to use industry data standards. There is work going on. There's a C4 standard for the capital projects delivery. There is the Mimosa group and the open O&M effort going on in defining the neutral, supplier neutral interoperability standards. We need to look at some of these standards. We need to look at other standards that are required. But the key thing, to keep the cost down, we need to collaborate and accelerate digital transformation using that collaboration. That's all I have. Thank you.
So maybe before we get going, so we've heard from Michael, we've heard from Manoj. Seth, maybe could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure thing. Yes. Hi, everyone. So my name is Seth Taylor. I'm a digital twin product owner at Chevron. I work in the Chevron Technical Center. I'm actually based out of El Segundo, a refinery of ours in Southern California. And I've been working in this digital twin space for probably 4 or 5 years now, really trying to help some of our business units figure out how to leverage some of the 3D visualization technologies that Michael was describing and begin to connect those more extensively to a lot of our operational engineering design data sets. When we started to work, it wasn't really digital twin in our heads, but as we've kind of gone through this journey, we come to appreciate it's very much in line with what a lot of the rest of the industry is doing. Anyway, happy to be here and share some of the challenges we're facing on the Chevron side and some of the opportunities as well.
Thanks, Seth. Yeah. Vinay, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm going to try. I don't know if I'm still sleepy. Can you hear me? Oh, good. My name is Vinay Anand. I have been in this industry as a whole for more than like 25 years now. Worked in the EPC, worked in the software side, and the owner side. Okay, good. I love the automation side, like how 2 different data sources can be integrated. I have done a lot on a practical purpose, and I am fascinated and I am passionate about digital and digitalization of activity. Most of the item that Michael said or Manoj said, we all agree. In fact, like a 2 o'clock meeting also, we had a lot of good presentation. Actually, yesterday, one presentation that Dow Chemicals was showing us like how you progress any deployment, like foundational and then plant and then site. That's the key, like we need to understand. I have also written some papers in the past. One paper like 4 years back about digital twin, how there's barriers are there. And I would love to talk that for next couple of hours, but I will keep my mouth shut. Just to let you know that I have been in this world for some time now. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So maybe I'll just, I'll kick things off. I'll ask the first question if it's okay. And Manoj and Michael, you've already presented, so maybe we'll hear from first Seth and Binay. So there's a couple of things we heard. Manoj, your presentation focused on digital thread and data federation. We heard, just like open process automation, decoupling hardware and software. In this case, we're talking about decoupling data from platforms. So Binay, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the challenges. Michael and Manoj have already talked about challenges. From Shell's point of view, how would you describe some of the challenges with digital twins?
Oh, that's easy for me. Like I have no challenge.
Let's start with an easy one.
Yeah, of course. So again, like I differentiate challenges in 3 categories: people, process, and technology. I will start with the technology side, right? So what Manoj said about digital thread, and before also somebody stole my word, federation. Where is Ralph? Sitting there. All right. So federation is very key because we need to understand the key is single source of data. You have to have a trusted data in front of you to make a decision. If you are making a decision on the data that is like a little bit older, even if it is 1 hour old, things can change. You are doing a critical changes. Think from the thinking point of it, like somebody has a heart transplant of that, you are getting some valve from digital valve, right? Like printed valve. You have some changes in that latest technology came and you are putting the wrong valve. So this is similar thing, like there is one person live involved. In the plant, if you are doing something wrong, I'm sure like there are multiple people involved. So my philosophy, my thinking is you have to have a real-time integration. The thread that Manoj said has to be real-time and no copy. It has to be federated. That is a real challenge right now. Like a lot of, I don't know, like software vendors are there. They all said like, we have the solution. You just give me money, I will give you the solution. True, that's true, that's true. Like if I'm a vendor, I will say the same thing. But really, do we have a solution? If I'm a plant operator, I will look into that scenario. Hey, I'm looking at the critical scenario where I want my valve transfer of my heart, which is my plant, where I want to make sure the data has to be trusted data. So technology-wise is a challenge. Although a lot of people say, hey, technology, we have a 3D model. I don't know, like I also watch some footballs or baseball. They have fascinating model. They do the commentary and newsroom hologram, and they do a nice 3D type of presentation, right? Is it 3D? Somebody asked like, when will 2D goes away? I asked one day to Michael, when the 3D will go away. Basically, like, can we have something like scenario that there is a plant, operation plant, and I want to see the thickness of one pipe that I feel may rupture in real time. That is my 3D, that is my digital twin. That may be like extent, maybe like it is a digital twin 20.5, something like that. We are talking about digital twin 1.0 or digital twin 2.0 with the 3D or 2D going away. But in my view, technology is not there. Why it is not there, I don't know. I'm not in that forum. But what we want to do is we want to solve one piece at a time. We don't have the foundational solve. We don't have, or we have many specs. So that what Michael said, we have, within a company, we have tens of standards. So we don't have a standard. So we are working on that one to collaborate among ourselves. One company is not there, but we are collaborating to come up with a scenario where we tell our contractors and suppliers, the guys, this is our standard. Can we work on interoperability? I guess it right? Yeah, so that like if somebody gives me normal design temperature, it should not be company A normal design temperature. It's very important for us to understand. Normal design temperature is a normal design temperature, guys. If I need to map that normal design temperature company A with a normal design temperature company B, I have to do some work. I want to avoid that. So if an industry, whatever CFOS or whichever company or standard company comes in, if somebody comes and say, hey, this is the standard, I would say that will solve technological issue. Technological issue will go away if we shut down the computer. We had 20 years back when I was working in one of the company in Houston, we had carpenter creating very nice 3D model. Trust me, like they created like very small pieces and very nice looking plant. I recently, like 5 years back, I went to one of the company next to our company there, and I saw a very big 3D model sitting on their desk. I said, like, what is this? They said, like 3D model. Very proud. Very proud. Do you use it? No, it is for guests to see.
Oh, thank you.
4 years back, not 4, 6 years back, in my company, I talked to some operational people. I said, are you using 3D model? They said, there is no use for it. So we used to spend a lot of money in the capital projects, create 3D model, and throw it away. Now, at least, I am very glad that most of us talk about using the 3D model. A lot of people till now, we have been using documents, only documents. Somebody told that they had a very large warehouse full of documents. And to search a particular PNID, they will have to go inside and spend a lot of time to search the PNID. Now we are going away from that. We are going to digitalize smart PNID. Basically, you click a line and you will see a lot of attributes, which is a good thing, which is also a complex thing. Earlier we did not have it. I came from that background where I used to create lines with the hand and calculate bill of material by counting the lines. That may be a solution in the future, or it was in past. So technology is a challenge. The biggest challenge, I won't go the process. Because of the technology changes, a lot of business process changes. One thing, I think Manoj said, asset register, right? It's a key. How many of you know, like in one plant, we have this many components or this many equipments? We don't know. We have some type of ERP system. I'm not taking any company's name. ERP system where we put a lot of asset tags, but is it fully done? No. There are a lot of things missing. So where do I find out? So if I have some type of even asset tag register, and if I add like master, that is good. The master asset tag register, creating, changing, adapt, and modifying at one place and going everywhere, that picture, I still like it, that Manoj showed in the middle. That will create a lot of solution and a lot of value to the site. Because I also am OSHA certified safety inspector. So basically, I can come to your place and I can ask you one question. How many equipment do you have? How many people are working at a particular location at particular time? Which product will tell you? Which technology will tell you? Other than if you create some type of digital twin, then you are really impersonating what is going on in the plant to your computer. Like last couple of years, we got a challenge. We got a challenge that very less people can go to the work. You have to have some type of control room sitting in your house. So this digital twin will expedite. So it's good that we are progressing that way, but we are not there yet. The challenge of the business process change will be big, and then Biggest challenge, I would say, is the people themselves. I went to one story, small story. Peter, is it okay?
Yeah.
I
It's
went
okay.
to a place called
The bus
Reading
leaves
in
at 6:30.
Pennsylvania. What?
Just kidding. Please continue.
Yeah, I will take less time than Michael, so don't worry. So I went to a place called Reading, Pennsylvania, in one of the company. It's a very good company. They are everywhere. They do a good job. I went there and I saw two things. One, they had big calculator, this big. And they also had like rulers and, drawing materials, like physical materials. And I was fascinated. I said, like, what's going on here? He said, like, yeah, we measure, we calculate vessel hoop stress. Really? Any kid can calculate that in the second. Oh, we have not transformed ourselves. The reason why we did not, because our management is happy with the way that we have been working for last 25 years. We have been giving the capital projects at less than the time and cost. So they are happy. So why will I change? So change of that people behavior, that they are already producing good, why they change, is the biggest problem also, what I see. And somebody said like, what was that minefield, right? I also like the Super Mario. The new kids versus the one that has come up. We did not have, I don't know, like, does anyone's phone work? But camera does work, right? It started as a phone to call, right? Now, people buy the phone for the camera, something else, right? So we start technologically advanced for something that was required, use case, but the use case changed fully because Apple wants for you to use it. So in my opinion, the people, they don't know what they want from this digital twin. They don't want to change. They are stuck somewhere. This people, process, and technology has to be solved. We have to integrate ourselves. We have to open it fully and collaborate, and then we will reach somewhere. We don't know, I don't know where, but wherever we read, I saw some use cases from Michael, and we have some use cases, and they are very close to each other. What we have to do is we have to go each line item and say, hey, we are solving this, creating this value, solving this, creating this value, and we'll reach at a very good, sustainable asset digital twin.
Vinay, thank you. All right, now I'm not sure that we're done challenges yet, but I do want to give Ralph and Seth a chance to say something. Ralph, any comments on challenges with digital twins?
I just wanted to build on what he said. When we had the meetings, when they brought up the use cases, that really grounded the group into a common understanding. And those use cases are listed in the document that Peter referred to. And I found the use cases a major grounding for the group and cohesiveness.
Okay, all right. Seth, any final comments before we move on?
I actually, in all honesty, I thought Michael kicked us off really well with the listing of some of this, some of the challenges facing us, some of the headwinds. I think a lot of it comes down to sustainability, which would include things like cost, scalability. Are we adding more work to folks in our business units who would potentially need to, maintain this? And there's maybe to Vinay's point, people, process, and technology solutions to that. But I suspect we'll get into some of those details a little bit more. And just to kind of give folks some context, I've been working with brownfield facilities and fairly new, very, very new facilities within Chevron to do digital twin implementations. And, there's unique challenges across companies that have global footprints for facilities of very different age and complexity and digital maturity. And I think developing strategies internally for how digital twin might look different depending on where you are in your company and the type of facility you have, the type of use cases you have, that's also a challenge for us going forward, is to figure out how you scale across global footprint with those types of differences between assets and use cases and end users as well. So hopefully we can get into that a little bit more.
Okay, thanks, Seth. All right, so I promised this would be interactive, really. Okay, who's got their questions? All we'd like you to do is please raise your hand, stand up, state your name and company, because I'm sure the panel would just love to answer your questions. Who would like to go first? Yeah, Mark Lusa from ARC's got the microphone. He'll come over and see you. Okay, we stumped the audience. Oh, we got a question back here, Mark. Way back there. Oh.
Just an easy one. I heard, Alex Johnson, Snyder Electric. What would you guys be willing to pay for? Okay, I mean, I heard open and free-flowing data and all the rest. What business model are you looking for? And what would you be willing to buy?
Great question. Anybody want to take that one?
You want me to do it? Yeah. I will kick off, like maybe I will not answer. If you give me the value, say for example, if you give me 10 million value, I will pay you $1 million. But first you give me the value. Because what you come is, you oversell it and you tell me that I will give you 10 million value, give me 5 million, and then it comes as 0 value. So for example, somebody said that the pull versus push. So you have to create a scenario where there should be pull. So instead of you coming to me for asking money, I should come to you and pay you. That should be the environment you need to create. You cannot just come to me and say, hey, Mr. Shell, here is this tool, this will create 10 million value on the paper, and give me the $5 million. So that is basically the dilemma we are living in. I will not pay you $1 if you don't create me value. First create me value. Sorry, anyone else?
So I'm going to just add a small thing to that. Yeah, we'll pay for the functionality that you provide, but we won't pay for keeping our data hostage, right? We want the data to be liberated. We want everybody to use the standards and be a good citizen so that everybody can benefit.
I'd like to add one thing. I just want to point out that there are not good digital twin solutions for operate and maintain. That's the primary reason this organization is together. That's the primary area of use cases, and there are millions of dollars on the table for a good solution to solve that.
Ralph, I'm gonna challenge you a little bit on that. I think there are solutions out there, and I don't. Look, I don't. You're probably not expecting anyone to directly answer that question, right? I think the cost issue is not just about software costs. It's about costs incurred over the lifetime of the solution by virtue of workflows required to support and maintain, and as well, work you need to do to integrate data, right? And I think there's a lot of upfront costs right now that we're facing doing this for the first time. And part of the intent of this working group is not to say that there aren't good solutions out there. It's trying to communicate how we can align on shared challenges that we have in the industry, and maybe align on communication to the rest of the folks that support us about where our biggest challenges are and how we can address those most effectively, right? But I don't think the issue fundamentally right now is that a particular vendor's platform is too costly, right? It's if we take a look at the lifecycle management of that, that becomes a more challenging proposition for all of us up on this stage.
I accept Seth's
I guess I
pushback.
would have added just a little, like, we intend to reward people for the expertise that they bring to the table. The expertise that people bring to the table is not holding hostage the data or our data, right? And so what I would say is that, similar to other areas, quite frankly, we want to reward, people for their expertise, but at the same time, let's not try to pretend what we're not, right? Can't be great at all aspects. There's a lot in terms of what I would say, a lot of startups, a lot of other small companies that add value in that full chain. And as Seth mentioned, I mean, when we talk about cost, it's not quite frankly, it's not necessarily software costs. We're talking about the people, the work process changes in terms of that entire cost, right? But I think the key part here is that, the model that we're currently under, where everybody is coming with their own, proprietary stack, I have visions in my head of back to the why OPA even started, right? I want to separate hardware from software, and if in the future I want to get software separated from the data. And quite frankly, we'll reward, the software companies for the expertise they bring, but recognize that it's not going to be a first mover. It's really talking about the development and the maturity that we will work on together.
Any other final comments before we move on? Got that one. Okay. Yeah, question over here, please.
Thomas Jensen, Hexagon. So Michael, I really enjoyed your presentation and the panel as well. So I have a question regarding vendor support in kind of establishing this vision and kind of partnering to get you to where you need to go. So you mentioned it's going to really take industry to make this change, right? And I think there's a lot of conversation today and yesterday around the convergence of IT and OT to really understand use cases and where you need to go as a business. But I think there's also the vendor aspect of how can we kind of look to partner with you as well and define that vision for the future. So how do you all see vendors kind of stepping in and supporting this ideation for what the future looks like?
Yeah, great question.
Go ahead.
Good question. I think, first and foremost, when we talk about some of, in our industry, we do a number of activities for regulatory compliance. And this is where I was saying, if I pick on, P&IDs or, some of your inspection requirements, et cetera, if we're going to change the media that is the underpin in our industry in terms of some of those compliance and activities, I think we're going to need both, owners and suppliers coming together saying, yes, we think this is a better way, right? We think this is, in terms of more efficient, this is more accurate in terms of the activities. That's part of the partnership. I think in terms of the support, this is an area where, quite frankly, we're all ears, right? I mean, I will tell you that in this space that we've been dealing with, there's a lot of what I would say great work that's done on a small scale. I think when we start talking about some of the integration that we want to do, when you start doing it at scale, that's where we need more and more vendor support. Because to scale and keep the principles of data and software separate does not mean that we're just going to say, ExxonMobil, we're going to convert all of our enterprise data into a single vertical stack, right? And I would say that the other part that, some tough love in terms of the discussion. I've been in a lot of conversations where I hear we are open platforms. And as I have learned, and my IT folks have been very keen to share with me, Michael, you have to go further and just say open platforms, right? Because, if you're really trying to talk about interface versus integrate, you need to get deeper in terms of how open in terms of the data and information truly is. The vision that we have in talking about 3D models, and I really want to impress upon this, is that it's beyond pressure, temperatures, and flows. Like an engineering model that has pressure, temperatures, and flows, okay, that's great. But, the vision in terms of, transforming our industry, it needs to get beyond that. Some of the data that we need to have unlocked gets into user and behavioral experiences with that software. How do I make sure I'm unlocking, in one of the earlier sessions, how many clicks it takes to get from one to the other? We talked about, I think there was a woman from Shell talking about making sure we have user, or Dow, I'm sorry, Caitlin, but making sure we have user experience in mind in terms of how do we take that data and how do we capture it. That is what I would say is that I have to be maybe a little bit more explicit when I say I want data to be open. Yeah, pressures and temperatures, but I want that additional experiential data as well in order to move us up on that maturity model.
Okay, yeah.
Just to add one line on that one, we have the working group we are going to add more and more. And yes, suppliers will be the key.
Okay. Question here. I think that's Elliot Bell.
Yes, Elliot Bell, Radix. Michael, thank you. I think you're on the right path. To the room and to the dais, though, 60 years ago, instrumentation was thought to be expendable. We put it in, we may fix it, we may maintain it, we may not. Honestly, some places, last week, instrumentation was thought to be expendable. They may fix it, they may not. We have seen cycles, though. We've seen going from pneumatic instrumentation to electronic. We've seen going from single loop controllers to DCS systems to APCs, to and from, back and forth. The problem that I think you're facing, Michael, and I ask this to the whole group, is it's one of a commitment, because we have done the models, but we won't stick with it because we don't understand it. And the reason we don't understand it is lack of commitment, realistically, which is what you're describing, and because we have so much fog in the system that people are afraid of the innovation. And what you're describing is really the innovation of thought, which says we have to move beyond regulatory controls. We have to move beyond the human interface to a point of really accepting that a completely integrated 3D model is the next level of control. Can you guys speak to that, please?
You know, I would say, let me use an example in case it's not clear in terms of the room. I had one of my data scientists come to me and said, Michael, I want to analyze the reliability of, ceramic bushing on a 230 kV line that is within 500, yards of overspray of a cooling tower. And I looked at them and I said, yeah, good luck. Like, we don't capture that data anywhere, right? And I think, when we talk about moving to a visual way of working, we're really talking about adding deeper contextualization of data that, quite frankly, will unlock potentially more value. At the same time of simplifying the way we do work. Because today, just humbly, in ExxonMobil, if it gets to data quality, it usually comes from a top down of make sure your first lines fill out, the 20 rows on a piece of paper, or okay, now it's digitally, so they can click 30 times. But that truly is not integrating experiential and behavior data that I think as we think of the future in a 3D imagery or an asset registry tree, because most of us, when we talk about asset registry tree, you're thinking of fixed equipment of a pump or a tower, et cetera. You're not talking about flanges. You're not talking about bolts. You're not talking about, the other equipment that is in our facility, structural, that quite frankly, we just do not capture the contextual information to do analytics, to do value. And to me, the only way we're going to do that, in my opinion, is to move to a visual way of working to where, quite frankly, it's the visual contextualization that launches the work. Just like my kids today, they have no idea what their grandparents' phone numbers are. All they need to know is they can click on it and, grandpa is going to answer the phone. When we talk about the future of work orders, I look at that as that's like a phone number. In the future, people are not going to have rows and columns of data and cost centers, et cetera. It is not needed to do the work that we're talking about. But in order to get there, we've got to come up with what I would say is, a way to support or ongoing that visual asset structure that we can then leverage additional value from.
If I understood your question correctly, you were asking about a future state where a digital twin with a 3D model is being used to control the plant. No?
No, it's actually closer to Michael's point, which is if you think about where we are and you think about how we keep repeating the allows us to do the analytics. It allows us to do the further expansion of the minds that Michael's talking about.
I would like to make a plug for use cases that are also just descriptive and diagnostic in nature, right? I think sometimes we get hung up a lot on this notion of being able to do prediction of future, whether it's for optimization or future scenarios, and productivity now, right? And the ability to derive value now from a digital twin has to be in our consideration and our equation. And we haven't talked about it too much, but a lot of the productivity opportunities that we're seeing right now have to do with just people being able to get much better situational context about the work that they do in the plant. And that's stuff that we can deliver now. The technology is there now. And to the point that Michael made during his presentation, the concern is that you deliver something that's as built day one, right, and useful day one, and by day 400, maybe not so much because of the requirements to update and sustain, right?
And I guess, if I may, the one thing that I was getting at is this: once you accept it as necessary, we would no longer whine about the cost of an instrument. We may whine about the cost of 1,000, but not about one. Until we get to the point where we see the digital twin or the absolute physical model, the same as we see the DCS, same as we see the PLC, same as we see the instrument, we won't get to where you're talking about. I do agree with building that in. It's just how we get the other.
And the key here, though, is that in order to make that happen, it has to be the way we do work. Because we're talking about transforming the work process. We're not talking about adding a digital, a shiny key. And because if we don't get to where the work process, that it's at the cornerstone, quite frankly, it'll be one of those things that comes and goes, right? So I fully agree, right? It's got to be part of the way we do our work.
Yeah. I think we need to have that microphone on.
How about now?
Try again, please.
Okay. So I hate to maybe distract the conversation to something totally different, but it feels like we're stuck in a 2D, 3D conversation all day. So just to sort of ask a different type of question. So if you really look 20 years out, what we're talking about right now is almost irrelevant, because I'm thinking about 3D printing, factory parts or pieces of even large plumbing, looking at using robotics. That just makes this conversation totally different, because what we are trying to do here is still want something that we as people can work with, which is three-dimensional images for isometric drawings or whatever. But if you're using next generation capability, it doesn't matter how many dimensions your system is managing. And we all use multiple dimensions when we talk about AI. So my question to the group is, if you fast forward 20 years, right, what do you see as really the end state when you start merging emerging technologies into digital twins? I get it, building a factory, you have to do certain things, but that's just day one. What do you need for the life of the next 30 years of the factory?
Great question.
Anybody
want to take that?
I got it.
I can start.
Go ahead, Vinay.
So technology advancement will be always there. Like right now, 3D printing and other technology that you mentioned is already there. Like component-wise, it's already in practice right now. What we are trying to solve is a digital twin, basically whole on a macro basis, not on a micro one. Micro one will be always there. What we are trying to do is can we have a remote plant sitting on our computer desk? Can we solve some of the instrumentation issues sitting there? There was one Microsoft 360 product where they were trying to solve some issues physically, and somebody was helping. We want to go beyond that. We want to solve something sitting in the control room, away from the physical plant. that type of scenario we are going. And like it will go, like AI cannot start one day one. AI has to be fed. Once you learn the process, then only AI will come in the picture. So
Right,
AI cannot be done in the digital twin 1.0. AI will come in the picture in digital twin after like say 5 iterations or 6 iteration. Once we have that type of data, once you know if I do the clockwise of the valve, AI will learn that will increase the pressure in the pipe. So that learning has to be fed. So it will take some time, and it is on the path. Digital twin, like I don't know if those vendors are there. I worked with one of the company, and they have got that. Forget about that. Beyond that, there was like a voice controlled AI, like, hey, shut down that valve. It will go there. Once we solve one space, then it will go there. What I'm saying is like, how many of you turn on your lights of the house from here? That's an AI, right? And we will go there once we solve the fundamental issues. We are talking about the fundamental issue right now. Yes.
Yeah.
So-
And
so-
we are doing
Go ahead, Manoj.
this to enable and expedite AI, right? Like AI is being used in different portions, but we are trying to move it systematically so it doesn't take 20 years and we can get there in 5-10 years, right?
Yeah, I
So-
was just going to add that I don't think it's really a technology. It's not purely a technology issue. I mean, the reason why I ask that is like, so how many people are still doing rounds in their plants? And then ask yourself, why are you doing rounds? Oh, to go get the pressure off a pump? Why? Right? Technology, you can get that real time, 365, right? Now, and I will be humble, I'll share with you, as we experiment in terms of the space, I unfortunately have had opportunities where I had a robot go out to go read a pressure gauge, right? So they come back and they come to me and said, Michael, now I need OCR and edge computing to convert it into a process tag to put it into a historian. And I'm looking at it going, okay, this is not the way we want to embrace technology, right? I mean, I think in the space of where we're going, and this is where a lot of this is driven by value case, right? You have to get back to, in a lot of the cases, this is not urban renewal. In our industry, right? I mean, I hate to break it, but we are in a commodity industry, right? This is not an area where I think, you're just gonna see mass urban renewal. So it's going to be value case by value case. But I think the key here is that as we make investments and as you talk about obsolescence, let's keep a vision or a North Star in front of us. And that, to me, over time is going to get us to, what does manufacturing look like 20 years from now?
Okay, so we've only got about 10 minutes left, and we've got a question in the front, and I want to have time for each panelist to talk about the next steps. So please, in the front, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Susanna Hyde. I'm with Hexagon. And I'm curious about where Chevron, Shell, Dow, where are you guys at with respect to the whole lights out concept, the autonomous digital plant? Is that part, you're smiling, where you guys are at with that? I've heard it, I've dealt with at least 2 or 3 customers that are starting to talk about that. Our company is talking about it, so I'd like to understand where you guys are at.
We are all over. Right now, we are all over. Like if you talk about like particularly one company, I'm talking about everywhere. Like what we are doing is we are just fishing around to find out the right solution and right place. You come to me, you say like, hey, this is the solution. We want to see it. Somebody else comes to me, hey, this is the solution. We want to see it. It's flashy looking, very good. Until we reach at a place where we start getting the value of that, the pull environment will not come. So what we need to do is we need to sell that value proposition to the end user. And once the end user said, yes, this is good, then only we will reach at the place. So we are all over right now. Sorry.
Yeah, so we are on our digital transformation journey, and as I mentioned, we are looking at strengthening our digital thread so that we can build towards that. So, we are still at the early stage on, you said about autonomous, right. So I think what we're talking about, like we're defining some of these principles, getting the basic blocks in place, and once we have that, we can start kind of building on top of that.
I'll say, Suzanne, it's a big part. I mean, it is a aspirational goal of ours. It's on our roadmaps. It's a part of our future. We're trying to understand how the enabling components come together, right, to facilitate that. And there's obviously regulatory environment that shapes and influences that as well, right? But I think as a, if you want to call it a North Star activity, yeah, that's a huge objective for us.
Just echo what Seth's saying. It's clearly on the radar, right? Will you ever get, I mean, does the word autonomous mean 0 people? Probably not, right? Will we continue to challenge ourselves and redefine in terms of how many people are working at a site? Can we get more people out of, potential hazardous environments, et cetera? Yes, right? I do think that technology will continue to be a key in this area. And I think this is an area, again, working together of how do we, find, technologies that are what I would say instrumental in that journey towards a future autonomous type facility.
And asset digital twins are a part of that journey, right? Part of that enabling capability.
So the 6 of us have been, plus others, so we've been working for about 2 years, building towards this event. Michael, I think you said it best. This is not going to happen without industry. So we really want to hear from you. So we've got about 6 minutes left in the session. Is there anybody that would just like to offer any comments, right? So we've got system integrators, we've got ENCs, we've got technology suppliers, we've got asset owners in this room. What do you think? Does anybody want to offer an opinion on what we're talking about today? Is it worth pursuing? Are you seeing the value? Okay. Hands up who thinks this is a good opportunity to pursue. Okay, come and talk to us at the end. Yeah. Okay, so maybe what I'd like to do is pivot. So you guys have had great presentations. This has been a great interaction. What closing comments do you have for the audience today? In terms of next steps, what do you want to have happen after this session? Maybe Benet, we'll start with you.
All right, good. So what we are going to do is, as a group, we will continue to make our strategy. We will collectively go towards the openness. We will try to bring on board a lot of EPCs and suppliers, and we will create an ecosystem, or at least a collaborative ecosystem, where we will try to resolve the closeness that we are getting right now, and also overcome the barriers. That's our goal. We are not going to interject anywhere whatever is going on in the solution creation, but we will try to guide from a high level and bring the next point. What we will be going is bring and collaborate with suppliers more.
Okay. Seth, over to you. What's next?
Yeah. So, well, I'd first like to call out my colleague Ed Moore, who's seated over there, and our interest in getting involved in this working group was really about people who we see having shared challenges coming together and trying to put some effort into addressing those as a group, right? And so what I hope comes out of at least the session today is if you're hearing things from the folks here that resonate with you as a facility owner, as an operator, and you're passionate about getting involved to create, either better communicate the opportunities and needs for those, for the folks who will be working with going forward. By all means, we'd love to see you get involved. Benet mentioned, or maybe other folks will mention what sort of activities we have planned going forward. But my basic message is we'd love to get folks involved to understand the challenges, and would like to help us flesh those out and capture and document and communicate those.
Yeah, I guess what I'd like to say first and foremost, I'd like to thank actually quite a few of the folks in the audience. The vision or the North Star that we have is not singular. It's not been formed by an individual. It's actually been formed by a lot of input from multiple companies, suppliers, as well as other owners. And I think, to me, this is the part we just want to continue to harmonize. And we'll continue to shape the tactical steps to get where we're going. But I want to bring people back to the principles of OPA, where a lot of activities have gone forward. If you look at the importance or that we feel that are associated with, that infamous word digital twin, we see a lot of similarities. And I think it's one of those where, quite frankly, we're looking for owners and suppliers to be a part of the journey, so that, quite frankly, from an industry standpoint, we will be able to accelerate, the use of this, what I would say is important concept in the way we transform our business.
So first, we want to thank everyone here for engaging. From Dow perspective, Renan has been participating in the group along with me, and we want to continue working with the group. But I think most importantly, we want more feedback and engagement. And I think you mentioned the insight report. We also identified some principles, and we are going to get into more detail on that, on defining it further of how we push this forward. So any feedback on that is welcome. Thank you.
Ralph?
I guess we should tell them that we're interested in additional members in the working group.
Yeah. So there's this gentleman standing up at the back of the room. His name is Mark Luciv. Mark is a client services manager with ARC. Mark has been helping to coordinate these activities. So anybody that's interested in knowing more about the working group or activities, interested in getting involved at any level, please contact Mark. And with that, please join me in a round of applause for the great presentations.